What's up people, this is Viper coming to you again, and as always with more CSGO skin tips. In this video I would like to talk to you about pattern skins. This type of skins is usually overlooked by skin creators, despite the fact that Valve does accept patterns every once in a while. If you've been following this channel, then you'll know that I once created a tutorial about creating skins. However, the methods I'll discuss here differ from what that tutorial included. So if you're interested in making a pattern skin, and you should, then this video is definitely for you. A lot of time and countless number of experiments have been done to make this video. So as a reward to me, please enjoy the video and share it with those you care about. As you already know, there are several types of skins. However, there are only two methods for skin application. The first method is the one used by most skin types, which is applying the skin on the UV of the weapon. Using this method, you tell the game what each weapon part should contain, and you do so by baking the diffuse map of the skin in your favorite 3D tool using the UV sheet provided by Valve. This way, the weapon will have a permanent look with the skin where each part remains the same. Skin types that use this method are custom paint job, gunsmith, patina, hydrographic, and anodized multicolored. The second method applies the weapon using triplanar mapping. In this method, you create a pattern regardless of how the UV sheet looks, and the game takes that pattern and applies it onto the sides, top, bottom, back, and front of the weapon. With this method, you are encouraged to allow different drops to have different looks by playing with the X, Y, and rotation offsets in the workbench, which we will see later. Skin types that use this method are spray paint and anodized airbrush. When you create a pattern skin, you will most probably choose a skin type that is not custom paint job or gunsmith. Therefore, I'll be discussing the rest of the types in this video. I've made a table showing the difference between the skin types. As I mentioned earlier, the patina, hydrographic, and anodized multicolored types work with the UV sheet of the weapons. This means that when applying a pattern with these types, you will get very visible seams, which means that you will find a hard cut between different parts of the weapon. And this will happen even if you use a seamless pattern. While with the spray paint and anodized airbrush, this won't happen with a seamless pattern. Another difference that we can see is the alpha channel. As we know, in custom paint job and gunsmith, the alpha channel controls how fast the skin wears. This application of the alpha channel is also shared with these two types. Next is the Fong albedo boost. This value is relevant to the patina and the anodized multicolored and airbrush styles. This value can make the skin look metallic by making it more shiny, depending on how high the value is. One more difference that we can see here is the 4 colors that we can specify in the workbench and how they're used in the skin. For the patina style, the color values specify the color tints that appear on top of the skin at different wearing stages. For the rest of the styles in the table, the colors define the entire look of the skin according to many parameters. The rest of the video will focus on the colors and how they're applied. I'll be using the anodized airbrush as an example, but the same concept applies to these 3 as well. The colors with which you create your pattern will not be the same that appear on the skin. As I've just mentioned, the 4 colors specified in the workbench with other factors will decide what appears instead. In order to be able to use those colors effectively, we need to understand how they are applied. The game separates the provided diffuse map of the pattern into 4 layers, red, green, and blue layers, as well as a base coat. First, the base coat is applied, then the red layer, then green, and the topmost layer applied is blue. Those RGB layers are converted into opacity masks. The more opaque an area is, the more color it has. Each opacity mask is then converted into red, green, or blue, which are then combined to form the final diffuse map. The base coat will blend with the transparent areas according to the level of transparency. The base coat is not provided in the diffuse map itself. It's introduced to the map through color 0 in the workbench. Color 1 replaces the colors of the red channel, color 2 replaces the green channel, and color 3 replaces the blue channel. The order of the application, which is base coat, red, green, and finally blue, is very important because each layer overlaps the one below it and replaces it depending on how opaque or transparent it is in the opacity mask. This will complicate things when we want to choose specific colors to appear in the skin. We will see this in more depth later on. So what do we do with this information? Well, we have 2 options, and we choose the option depending on what we want to achieve. Let's start by the simple method, which is to create the pattern using only red, green, and blue colors. This way, whatever colors we choose in the workbench will appear in the skin without them getting altered in any way. A good example that follows this method is the AUG Snake Pit skin. We can see in the pattern that it contains only red, green, and blue colors, each with 2 shades, so in total we get 6 colors. So in the workbench, whatever colors we choose will be reflected in the skin as well. So this is the simplest method to create a pattern. However, as we can see, it limits us with the color choices and we can only get up to 3 colors in the skin. And this brings us to the second option that we have, which is to combine the colors in the RGB channels and get new colors out of them. Unfortunately, the way the colors blend in CSGO is not very straightforward. For example, we know that 100% green added to 100% red will give us yellow, or 100% blue added to 100% red will create magenta. But in CSGO, colors are not added this way. As I mentioned earlier, the colors in the red channel are applied to the skin first, then the green channel, and then blue. Each time a layer is applied, it overlaps and replaces the layer below it according to how transparent it is in the opacity mask. Let's see an example that illustrates this. Let's say our image has this yellow dot which is 100% red combined with 100% green. Since the green layer is applied after the red layer, that means green will entirely overlap red. And in the workbench, we'll end up with 100% of what we specify in color 2, regardless of what we specify in color 1 for the red layer. Now let's add this orange dot. It's composed of 100% red and 50% green. In the game, green will overlap red by 50%. So now, unlike before, this time color 1 will have an effect. If we add blue to the equation, then it will overlap red and green depending on how much blue there is. If the percentage of blue is larger than those of green and red, then it will entirely replace them and only color 3 will be visible. From these examples, we can deduce 2 main things. First, if you want to be in control of what colors appear in the skin, we need to choose the colors of the pattern carefully. We can't expect color 1 to have an effect if the percentage of green or blue in the pattern are higher than that of red. We also can't expect color 2 to have an effect if the percentage of blue is higher than green. The second deduction is that unlike custom paint job skins, we can't have any 2 colors we want appear on the final skin. For yet another example, take this simple pattern. We can't have all these colors appear together, because if we have pure blue, that means we chose color 3 to be blue. However, the magenta is green plus 100% blue. And since we chose color 3 to be blue, then it will entirely replace the green color and end up with blue again. Same goes for red and yellow. So, you might be wondering at this point, how am I supposed to choose the colors of my pattern? Well, the method that I devised is to create a palette in advance based on how you want your pattern to look. Remember how I said earlier that in CSGO the red layer is applied over the base coat, then the green over the red, and then blue over green? With this method of blending, we end up with different colored tints instead of new colors. Here I've created a color palette that contains many colored tints that are produced using the blend method of CSGO when it comes to patterns. This does not cover every possible blending outcome, but most other tints will be similar to this bunch. The first row blends 100% red with green at 0, 25, 50, 75 and 100%. Second row blends 100% green with blue at the same percentages, and the third row blends 100% red with blue. I haven't included mixtures of red, green and blue together, but as I mentioned, the results will not be extremely different than what we see here. So, how did I get these color tints? I created this palette using Inkscape by creating 5 dots of red, 5 of green and 5 of blue. Then for the red ones, starting from the second, I duplicated the dots and set them to 100% green and transparency of 25% to 100%. Same method for the green and blue lines. You can use other tools to achieve similar results, however, I noticed that the results can be slightly different for some reason. But I don't think those small differences can have a big impact on the final result. In any case, I do prefer using Inkscape or any other vector graphics tool like Illustrator because of the next step. This palette shows how pure red, green and blue mix together. But what if I want to see other colors in the skin? What happens if I assign different colors for color 1, 2 and 3 in the workbench? How will those colors blend with each other? In order to find out, all we need to do is change the colors of the dots in this palette and keep the current transparency. For the red dots, we can simply click on the red dot, go to Edit, select Same Fill Color and then choose the color we want in the Fill tool. For the green and blue, we need to do it one by one, otherwise we lose the transparency values of the dots. To illustrate how to work with this method, I will show you how I created my bouquet skin. Using the same process I've just mentioned, I played around with the colors and found that this palette would be suitable for my skin. Specifically, I chose these colors. So in order to get these colors in the skin, I had to color my pattern with these colors, because only then will I get these results when I choose yellow, magenta and green in the workbench. For demonstration, I will show how I created one of the flowers in Inkscape. The version of Inkscape that I'm using is 1.2. In order to save time, I'll start with the red petals of the flower and the black center. Call this layer red and duplicate it. Rename the new layer green. No need for the black center in the new layer, so I'll delete it. Click on the flower in the green layer and go to the Fill and Stroke tool. Set the color to be pure green and then set the transparency to 75%. Now I'll go back to the red layer and change the fill color of the center to be a gradient from this color to black, because I don't want the center to have one solid color. Instead, I want it to have a gradient that goes from this color to whatever I choose in color 0 in the workbench. And now I copy everything in the view and toggle the visibility of the layers and create a new one and paste everything inside it. And now we can group the objects by pressing Ctrl G, which will allow us to use this flower as one object. I created the rest of the flowers in the same way and scattered them around in a seamless pattern, and added a blue background because I want the background to be green in the skin, which is the color I chose for color 3, which represents the blue channel. I created the TGA and VTF files of the pattern, and this is how it looks in CSGO. The colors are the same ones that we chose, although in some places there are slight differences, maybe due to some differences between how Inkscape and CSGO blend colors, not really sure. Also, the lighting of the workbench can affect the colors a little bit, but still we managed to control the colors. And finally, I'll quickly go through the settings that are relevant to patterns. The pattern scale value decides how many times to repeat the pattern. The larger this value is, the smaller the objects inside the pattern become. The X, Y, and rotation offsets control the coordinates of the skin. Moving the X offset will make the skin shift horizontally, the Y offset moves the skin across the vertical axis, and the rotation rotates the skin clockwise or counterclockwise depending on the direction. On the left, you can specify the ranges of the offsets from minimum to maximum. If the ranges are large, then changes in the offset values will be extreme. The existence of the offsets causes different skin drops in game to be unique. With this feature, your skin can have rare drops that show special items like the Glock Moonrise skin. And I guess that's it for this video. I know it was a bit long with some complicated details, but I hope it was clear enough. Try to experiment with the colors yourselves and see what works best for you. Also, don't forget that you can keep it simple and work with only the red, green and blue colors. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and as always, I'll try to answer as soon as I can. Take care and see you soon.